Hi, my name's Jeff White, and I'm a Kingdom Factor coach. And today, we're actually going to spend some time with my friend Chad, and we're going to hear about Chad. We're going to hear about what he's up to in the world and how he's making an impact to bring God glory, and how he does that as a business owner, as a Christian man. And so, Chad, welcome to the podcast. Glad that you're here. Thanks for joining me. Um, I think the most important thing to get out of the way is, can you say your last name so we're super clear on how to say it?
Thanks, Jeff. My last name is Schnitger. My wife almost didn't marry me because of it. And that's a good joke because my wife's maiden name is Dingus. And she thought Schnitger was worse. I'm like, I've called people Dingus out of anger. And
Oh,
she wanted to hyphenate. But I love our
wow.
kids. Can you imagine little Schnitger Dingus dudes running around the soccer field? It,
Oh man, I wish I would have seen that. That would have been great.
the lady at the desk at the county when we turned in our marriage certificate, she is the one who convinced my wife. My wife, she left the little checkbox thing. I don't want to take his last name. And the woman looks at her, looks at the and looks back and says, but ma'am, your last name is Dingus.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I think my wife and I are on the opposite side. Like, her maiden name was Christmas, and my name's White. So we were gonna hyphenate White Christmas. We chose not to, but White Christmas might have been cooler than Dingus Schnitzker. So anyway, anyway, despite your last name, you're up to big things in the world, and we want to just let people hear from you, and how your faith interacts with that. And so I'm going to ask you some questions about it. Would you just share your journey about you're part of Greystone, you're part of Faith and Freedom Coalition. Can you just share a brief journey of how you got into those things and what you're up to?
You knew me kind of around the time when all this stuff started. Many years ago, I had a small real estate business. I'd fixed and flipped houses during the recession. And I had worked for one specific company that just one day kind of moved out of state. And it
Um,
left me a little hurt.
Right.
I had worked with a bunch of older men who I felt had taught me a lot. And to this day, I'm
Mm.
incredibly appreciative of what they had given me, as far as teaching me management skills and investment skills and things like that. But they just up and moved out of California, moved to Florida. And the
Mm.
last lesson they taught me before they left is sometimes it's just business. And that hurt a little bit. And I took a part time.
Yeah.
I started a small company doing real estate inspections like I had used to do. And then when that started going south, I took a part time job, walking around and knocking on doors and talking to about politics. And I'd always been
Mm.
interested in politics, but at the time, I couldn't have told you what a county supervisor was.
Mm.
And the people that had hired me didn't give me a lot of training, not a lot of knowledge or skills. And so I ended up spending an exorbitant amount for a part-time job for me to spend 30, 40 hours a week educating myself on local politics, on local issues, on ongoing lawsuits and stuff like that. I certainly went above and beyond, but I felt like it was what I needed to speak honorably and knowledgeably about the issues I was being asked to talk to voters about.
Mm.
And that candidate won in a primary election. And then I had the opportunity to lead teams of people doing the same thing that I had just been hired to do, for another very important race down in Los Angeles. And that was kind of the backstory of Greystone. We weren't a company at the time. I was just a field director I think we had 66 employees in 2014. And then,
66.
yeah. Um,
66 employees. I mean, that's not a small, I mean, that's a small business, but it's big. Well done.
And when it comes to politics, I mean, these are large businesses that we put together, and we have
Yeah.
120 days to do it, and then you have to wrap
Yeah.
up shop. And so, and if your candidate loses, it's not like the paychecks keep coming in, but the employees look to you to,
Right.
what do I do now? Do I get unemployment? What's information about this? Can you get me a letter of recommendation? And so that process of starting a business and then just kind of collapsing it, in
Mm.
politics is normal, but for my real estate background, there was so many things I would have done better if I'd been given more time. And so when that
Yeah.
candidate won in 2014, they brought me back in 2016. I think I had like $1 million budget on that project, and we hired 126 people the following year or following cycle. And that was when Greystone started. We converted from being
Okay.
a part of the actual campaign to being a company. And in 16, we had one campaign, one candidate, Where once again, the difference between my company and the other companies was what I had experienced. I do not hire people to be unknowledgeable representatives of local
Mm,
politics. And
yeah.
half of what I do at significant expense to myself is
Yeah.
train people to know the district, the issues, and the candidate better than any other paid representation team out there. And so that's kind of what sets apart. So 16 was one
Yeah.
campaign, 18 was 3 campaigns, 20 was 6 campaigns, 22 I think I had 12 campaigns, one really big one in Los Angeles. That was about half my revenue. And then 2024, we had 68 candidates throughout the state and a personnel team of about
Wow.
850 employees.
So describe to somebody who just meets you, what does Greystone do? What's your mission? What's your vision statement? Like, how would you describe that to somebody?
We are a conservative leaning political consulting firm. About 80% of our income is simply hiring paid campaign workers, whether they're representatives, canvassers, phone callers. We do AB5 compliant, which is a law for California, payroll processing, where we actually allow other campaigns to put their run their payroll through Greystone so that their
Mm.
small campaigns are California labor law compliant. Um, and more than that, we are experts in a number of fields, particularly political targeting, political messaging, strategy. We don't do a lot of mail. We do a lot of texts, digital,
Mm.
emails, but predominantly we're targeting. So I know the political software, and we recently bought a large and the leading California political Republican database in the state. And so that was our newest investment that has paid off significantly already. But
So
we are
you're the guy that keeps sending me the text messages. I'm just
That
kidding.
is, for the most part, Donald Trump and something called Win Red. All right, I take no responsibility for that.
No, that's great. So I'd love to jump in and just hear, like, does Greystone only take Christian candidates?
We don't only take Christian candidates, but
Right.
even in
Okay.
a non-Christian field or non-Christian candidates, we run the company. My business partner is not a believer,
Okay.
but
Okay.
he allows me to run the company with values that I can sleep with at night, and that's not the industry
Okay.
standard. There are a lot of people,
Yeah.
even if you identify as a conservative as I do, and on the Republican side, there are a lot of people that run this industry in a way that normal business owners would not be able to get away with. And that's because the candidates come and go, but the consultants are there for cycle after
Mhm.
cycle. And if a
Yeah.
candidate loses, then the consultant comes back and there's no one there to say the consultant was bad because that candidate's long gone. And so,
Yeah, so when you think of like those values that you say help you sleep at night, what would a few of those be? And there may be some values, and there may be some that are like biblical principles, but share a few of those with me of things that are most important to you, Chad, as the owner, um, of Greystone.
well, firstly, I only engage in candidates and issues that I agree with. I have had many opportunities to take, as if I'm just a gun for hire, contracts, and I have taken some Democrats, but if I take a Democrat, it will be like a moderate Democrat versus somebody endorsed by the Socialist Party.
Okay.
That's all like a mod, and these are in races where there's no conservative candidate. But and it's not just politics; it's where people have asked me to say speak ill of other candidates.
Mm.
So Greystone we're the one of the only companies that I know in politics that does no negative campaigning, and we do that because
Mm.
I I don't feel like it's effective in the median of what we do. When I have somebody face to
Yeah.
face and you just go to someone's house and you speak ill of another person, I don't feel like that's the
Mm.
way of doing it. I don't feel good doing that. Um, we spend an excessive amount of time training our employees so that I always say that you're going to be trained to be an expert in your field, and people will look at you as one because you are.
Mm.
Because despite the fact that we all took, social studies in high school, and the fact that I have a, copy of the Constitution right here, there are very few Americans who have read any of it, who really know their
Mm.
levels of government. And I have to train my employees to start with before they go in the field and go represent my candidates. So Those are the
Mm.
type of things that both set my company apart from our competitors, and really has built us a reputation of a really good team. And I've
Hmm.
been
It's
really
great.
protective of our reputation. The last thing I do on the leadership side, every cycle, I say that I refuse to be in authority without being under authority. And it was something that I had heard from a pastor a long time, Mark Driscoll, but I know, so we got
Mm-hmm.
Mitch Dillon's under Mr. Driscoll. But it's a great thing to be. So I will every
Mm.
single year hire a former boss or someone who knows me well enough that if I'm doing something wrong or I'm not treating my management team right, they'll
Mm.
call me out on it. My
Yeah,
business
it's
partner
great.
too. And that you got to create these accountability metrics, not just for your employees, but for yourself.
Love that. What's a principle around that? Like, what would you call that if you had to tell somebody like, I do this? Is it accountability or is it more than that? What do you think?
I make all the managers read a book called Extreme Ownership. And
Okay.
we all take extreme ownership of what we've been
Is that
given.
Jocko?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jocko? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before
I
I
I
commit,
just bought it recently. It's on the shelf to read. So
oh, it's amazing. Just get an audiobook and listen to him himself talk about his wars in
that's
Iraq.
true. That's true.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And it's a guiding force
Mm,
for the managers I have that are not Christians, but most are.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
uh, it's accountability. It's strong accountability for the parts
Yeah.
that I had given. But it's
That's
ultimately
great.
on me as a leader.
Yeah. I love that. How is I mean, there are some Christian business owners and they're in marketing and they're in distribution or logistics, right? And there's not something that feels as controversial as politics. How does your faith like shine? How does your faith get challenged? Maybe answer it in two parts. How does your faith get challenged and how does your faith shine in the political industry which you're in?
Yeah, and it really is industry, and I think a lot of people don't think of it that way. But when it comes to my faith, I had that reputation. On top of Greystone, I run a nonprofit. It's very complimentary called the Faith and Freedom Coalition of California, and it's a political nonprofit where we support specifically Christian issues and Christian candidates in sometimes races that are a little difficult, that most people
Mm,
would have thrown their hands up in the air. We've had some great successes. But when it comes to how my faith shines, we do have a reputation from Sacramento to DC as a firm that one we don't shortchange or cheat our clients.
mm,
There's an honest metric where a lot of people in similar fields in canvassing or they just say that they sent teams of people to go do things and they don't.
right.
Um, there's the fact that people know that I don't do negative campaigning and they won't even ask me after a while.
Mm,
Or I turn down candidates who don't represent my values, who I wouldn't feel comfortable supporting personally or professionally. And so my pickiness, and I wouldn't even call it necessarily that, it certainly precedes
yeah.
me. But because they know that
Mm,
I represent more than just a canvassing firm for hire or a political company for hire. I certainly have my own sets of values, and that's made clear right off the bat. And so there are a lot
love
of
it.
people that they look at me as far as as someone who's made decisions that other firms wouldn't, and it's based on my faith.
I love that. What I heard and what you said is there's love, and love is, I'm going to choose to do things a certain way. There's integrity, which says I'm going to do it this way, and I don't need to I don't need more business by doing it without integrity. And it sounds like a lot of hard work as well. Let's go back to one thing you said because I was blown away by that. So you had a few employees or whatever. So how do you ramp up and have 800 employees and then all of a sudden ramp back down? Like, tell us about the ramp up and ramp down. How often does that cycle happen? And because that's a lot. Like, yeah, that seems like a lot of pressure, and so I'd love to just hear from you. What does it look like to ramp up and ramp down with that many employees?
So it's called debt. That is a solution for that. So if
Okay.
I want to run 68 campaigns at the same time, I create my org chart early in advance, and sometimes you don't know where these clients are which clients that say they're going to hire you and they don't have money because they didn't fundraise money. Um, it's a lot of it's gambling. A lot, I
Mm.
wish there was a better term for it, but I had another business owner once say he's not a gambling man. I said, you're a small business owner. You're gambling with your time. You're gambling with your money. Every dime you could pull out to feed your family, if you put it back in the company, you've just,
Mm.
so um, the Greystone has to onboard our management team way early. And even now, I've got a number of people on staff part time because it's the off season, and just keep the lights on, answer emails, answer EDD. California EDD is
Mm.
terrible. I probably get 15 or 20 letters a day, whether it be requests for information for unemployment for candidates who left 6 months
Mm.
ago, 8 months ago. And so that type of system is full time, even if you have to ramp up. So last year we were able to pull out, I think we pulled out like $250,000 in debt in order to hire my management team by June. And then I
Mm.
didn't get my first paying contract till I'd say August. And then when you've got 20 full-time, well-paid people on salary, that is a weekly hit. We got down to, and this I always call it a God thing. We got down to less than $3,000 in our checking account before we finally got our first big check last year. And
Oh
every
my
single
gosh.
cycle, it does the same thing. Every
Yeah.
cycle,
Yeah.
you're just about to go in bankruptcy, and then God provides you. But for Greystone,
Yeah.
I got 3 months to make $4 million, and
Right.
so you have to make these investments in advance. And after these many years, we've hired like 5,000 people all throughout mostly Southern California, and so I've got a
Yeah.
callback list of over 1,000 people. And you'd be surprised at
Mm.
how many of them come back because they like how we treat them. We treat them well. They
Yeah.
like the industry. They like the candidates. They get to know their congressmen. And most people never know
Hmm.
their congressmen, let alone have a sit-down conversation with them. I'll send them to lunch if they're interested. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we
I
treat our
love that.
employees pretty well.
So you started using the word gambling and talking about that, and it is. I mean, I would say it's risk and reward, right? Owning a business, there's risk and reward, right? And there's faith and there's finances, and all of those things collide all the time when you run a business. And what would be um, what would be a couple guiding principles that you might share with somebody who they're not in the political world, but they're going to start a business and they're going to have employees and they're going to do a lot of the things that you're doing. They're going to do it differently. Maybe it's not in the politics, but like what are some principles that you would share with them and say, make sure you do this? Like, what would that be?
I would say, as somebody who spends a lot of time hiring people, and this may come up as a little harsh, but go with your gut when it comes to making decisions on people. If there's a bad first impression, there's a good chance it's not going to work out at some point in time. And it's unfortunate that because us Christians, we want to give everyone second, third, and fourth chances, but
Hmm.
sometimes that Christian, it's not unkind to say you're not working out for my company. Sometimes it's a harder, it's much worse for you personally, for your family, for your faith,
Hmm.
if you're dragging along an employee who simply is not going to make the cut. He's dragging down the team,
Good.
not pulling their weight. And so, as somebody who spends a lot of time hiring, managing, and training and deploying people, I would say one of my best piece of advice is when I was younger, I used to have a real hard time hiring people that were older than me. You have this concept of respect your elders. That's when I started growing my beard in my 20s because I thought people would respect me more if I had facial hair, right? If I looked older.
Nice.
And then now I
Nice.
look too old and I'm bald and I covered up with a baseball hat. But I'm an expert in my field, and so no one, whether
Yeah.
they're older or younger than me, doubts my ability to make decisions and stuff like that. But those types of
Yeah.
things that I came into business with,
Mhm.
I, I feel like they caused me to make mistakes that later on would have hurt me further down the road. But eventually, you have to
All
realize,
right. Yeah.
build your teams correctly, surround yourself with people who reflect your company, that reflect your values, that
Good.
you trust more than anything else. And then when it goes
Yeah.
out there, be an honorable person because you will see all of your competitors or many of your competitors cut corners or make mistakes or burn clients, and you don't have to fight back. The
Sure.
only way you can fight back, the best way to fight back as a Christian is to just keep doing a good job because those guys go
Yeah.
away. 10 years later, you're still here.
Love that. Love that. One of the things I've heard before, which I think applies to what you just said, is hire slow, fire fast.
I can't hire slow. I wish I could hire slow, but I only have 120 days.
I know, I know. Well, slow meaning methodical and, some discipline to it. Like, don't just, oh, you're hired.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I remember when Amazon was growing so much, there's a billboard on the freeway and it basically said, we're hiring tomorrow, just come with ID and you're hired. Like you don't want to hire like that. You want to slow down a little bit. And then there are times where firing is a blessing to them, to you, and sometimes it's necessary. And it is interesting how you said, like, as a Christian, sometimes we want to give people all these chances, right? We call that grace, right? We give grace, we give grace, we give grace. I gave a lot of grace, and several employees. I can tell you stories, back in the day with
Yeah.
the business that I ran, and I've only had two employees come back to me. One of them came back to me and apologized, how angry she was when we had let her go. And she came back like a year later and apologized. And she said, God's been working on my heart. And I need to come back and apologize. And I was totally caught off guard.
Yeah.
And then I had another person who said that was the best thing that happened to my life because it made me go do something else I needed to do. Like it was hard in that moment, but when employees come back and apologize or they come back and thank you for firing them, you're like, okay, I did something.
I haven't had
You
that,
don't hear that a lot, but
but there are certain types of jobs for certain types of people. And I
for
learned
sure.
that back
Yeah.
in real estate. And I had a buddy of mine who I kept trying to drag along with me. And ultimately, when he finally left, he went to the school board and he's flourishing. And
Yeah.
just certain types of jobs, sure, there's no harm in that. But
Yeah.
we shy away from the word fire as if it's some sort of a terrible thing. It's not always. Sometimes it's just a temporary thing.
Yeah. Um, I think about people, young people. They're going to college. Some of them are very purposeful, right? I'm going to college. I want to be a teacher. I'm doing teaching. I'm teaching. I'm going to college. I want to be a nurse. I know what to do. I'm going to college. I want to be a doctor. I know what to do. There's some professions, they know what they want to do. They go to college. They go do it. Your journey was really different than that, right? Like you weren't 5 years old saying, I want to be a political, you know, I want to be in this role. And so from real estate to this, I'm not going to say you fell into it, but you kind of were like, oh, I'm kind of passionate about this.
Yeah.
What would you tell well, first of all, first question, what's your actual degree in?
I was business economics at UC Riverside, and I
Okay,
was a
UCR, business economics, right?
yeah.
Um, but regardless of your degree, you went down a journey and ended up here and made it into something. What are a few things that you did that had to keep going to go after this? And where did that passion come from to get from real estate to right turn to where you are today?
Um, and I think this is all of us as Christians. We can look back at our lives and say the same thing, but it's totally a God thing. And if you look at the characters in the Bible that we follow the most, who did the most, God loves to take people from humble beginnings, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not going to claim to be the world's best, most humble person, right? Because the contradiction there. What I would say is I don't have a personal or professional background that would have led me towards this, but what I can see this many years later in my career is how God opened doors that prepared me in
Mhm.
every step of the way.
That's great.
I told you, even before real estate, I was a certified medical. That was an EMT, and so I
Mhm.
thought I was going into, I thought I was going to go work in hospitals or on ambulance crews. I did a little bit of that, and while I was waiting for AMR to call me back, and I took the job in real estate, and
Mhm.
I learned more. To this day, I'll say I learned more about business from running that small business in real estate than I ever
Mhm.
did in this industry. The industry is very much short term minded, and as somebody who has that long term mindset, I made a number of decisions that were very different than my competitors, and that's probably why Greystone has grown and successful as it has been and has maintained the reputation it has today. If I were to go back though, and if I wanted to be more successful, the best thing I could have done would have been to just go intern in DC at 21 or 23 or 24, because
Mhm.
that's what a lot of these young politicals do. but that is not an environment that I think is conducive for a young Christian. And
Mhm.
so I have a lot of people when I do public speaking ask me, hey, what do you recommend I bring into politics? What do you think I should learn? What should I study? And my answer is don't go be a doctor, go start a business, go coffee shops, bring that back. Don't go to
And
school to be a lawyer and then come back and make laws, because 80% of your lawmakers right now are
yeah.
lawyers and they don't have any experience doing the things that they legislate on. I talk about all the farmers affected in the Central Valley and all the races I work on. They say none of these people even knows what a combine is.
Mm.
And so those are the types of things that my industry was lacking. And when I look at my past and I look at how God's taken someone like me and kind of brought me and trained me a little bit. I'm bidding on a huge project right now for the country of Israel, which I'm very excited about.
Wow.
And it's one of the biggest projects I've ever done in my entire life. I only have 6 months to pull it off, and it involves me hiring 100 people over the entire western half of the United States.
Wow.
And when I put this thing on paper and I start planning it, I realize that God has let me do a little bit of every single one of the
Mhm.
pieces on this plan. And if there's one person out there uniquely qualified to take on this big a project, it's me. And it's not because
Mm.
I planned it. It's just because
Yeah.
God's. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and I think you're right, but you still had to show up. You still, God was directing your path, but you still had to work, you still had to go after it. Um, I love that, and man, if this Israel thing becomes a thing, that's pretty powerful. I
Yeah.
mean, did you ever expect that? Did you think this was gonna be the thing 5 years ago, 2 years ago?
They didn't even call me till election. The first time I got an email from these guys, it was election day last year, and I missed that email for
Okay.
a month because on election day I check out.
Right.
And about a month ago,
I'm done.
I brought out about 12 pastors. We toured about 4 hours of the Holy Land, which was great.
Right.
But then I spent 4 days in the war zones. So we were on the border
Uh-huh.
of Gaza. I toured some IDF bases in the Golan Heights and the West Bank. They don't call it the West
Wow.
Bank; they call it Judea and Samaria. Very important. But for our American culture, Judea and Samaria, it doesn't mean anything. We know kind of what the West Bank is. We've heard that term before.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so what a great opportunity. Once again, I didn't know those guys 7 months ago. 7 months ago today,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
last month I just came back with 12 pastors, and it changed our lives. Everything was
Yeah.
solving.
Love it, man. Love it. Love what you're up to. I want to wrap us a little bit. Yeah, what you're speaking to somebody who is in ministry. Their faith is being challenged. There's difficult things in their life. There's good things happening, right? Just the part of owning a business, being in marketplace ministry, it's challenging. What are a couple just like what are a couple final words that you would tell somebody who's just starting out? Like what would you tell somebody?
I would start by saying, being a Christian in the free market. First of all, this is our missions field, right? So
Mhm.
people, um, and some of them that don't work out or are bad employees, they'll use your faith against you. But um, more than that, it is somewhat of a lonely journey, and it doesn't have to be. You can find groups like yours to
Mhm.
have people come around you and say, "Hey, listen, my wife stays at home with the kids and she has a hard time," which is certainly us here. We are homeschooling 2 kids, one's still in diapers, um, and I come in stressed out because I just got cursed out from a billionaire or a pack leader or a union leader or a politician,
Mhm.
and I'll walk in and she doesn't get that because I
Mhm.
protect her from those types of things. And other business owners are in the same
Yep.
boat. We deal with other people that don't maybe have our values, or it's not on our faith, it's on us personally to provide the service or good that we've been hired to do, and we have to do that within values of our faith. And so it's
Mhm.
important to be able to talk to other, preferably Christian leaders who've been
Mhm.
there, who know what you're experiencing, who can give you advice, because that stress that you deal with when you're walking in the office, even if right now the office is in my garage, um in the busy season, I travel 1,000 miles a week. I've got
Mhm.
12 offices throughout the state of California, hundreds of employees, and my wife calls because one of the kids is sick, and I have to come home, and stay up all night with a throw up baby, with throwing up baby. So
Yeah.
that that life thing never goes away, and it's
Mm.
important to surround yourself with other leaders who are intellectual equals, who are people you can learn from, the mentorship aspect. But just to kind of let you know, hey, I'm not alone. Um, what
Mhm.
you're doing, everybody deals with. Just hang in there, keep your Bible handy, um, and do your best. You can't do everything, but you can do what you've been called to do.
Yeah.
Um, and that's
I love
probably
that.
yeah.
I love that. Chad, thanks so much for your time. Thank you for doing what you've been called to do. Like this is an interesting space. It's a space that a lot of people aren't even thinking about.
Wow.
It's a space that's really important, especially here in California. And so thank you for the courage that you have to do what you do. And thank you for like going after it and hiring a lot of people and making an impact in a positive way. Thank you for not going after the enemy, right? And with negative campaigns. So I appreciate you a ton. So grateful that you were on today. And as I close out, with Kingdom Factor, the thing that I love about Kingdom Factor is it's marketplace ministry. It's us getting together. You described it perfectly. It's lonely at the top sometimes, right? When you're the boss and you get $3,000 in payrolls due, it's very lonely. It's very stressful. But at Kingdom Factor, we have these groups. We get together once a month, and we get to pray for each other. We get to hold each other accountable. We get to learn from each other. We get to talk about things that are hard, and we get to encourage each other. Because all of us want to serve God well in our businesses, but also love our wives, love our families, those people in our lives that are really important to us, and we want to find that good balance. And oftentimes it takes other people around us to sharpen each other and to be part of that. And so, again, I just want to say thank you, man, and appreciate you a ton. Go get them. And I know you're going to be ramped up soon for some big things in the fall. And there we go. So thank you for being here. And you guys, thanks for being part of what we're doing. And yeah, we look forward to connecting with you. Greystone, if they want to find out about Greystone or the Faith and Freedom, is there any platform they can go to, or where would they find more info?
Greystone, really, my clients are politicians. So if you're running for office, it's greystonepublicaffairs.com. But if you're just interested on what Christians should be aware of and knowledgeable about when it comes to faith-based issues in California, it's Faith and Freedom is ffcca.org. So Faith and Freedom Coalition of California, FFCCA.
Okay, perfect. Love it. Thanks a ton, Chad, and we'll be in touch. All right, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.